I'm going to call the meeting to order for the July 17, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Heather? Heather,
Ms.
could you call
Bowe?
the roll?
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Charlie?
Here.
Mr. Boswell? Mr. Granger?
Here.
Ms. Liebel?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
I want to take the moment to welcome Erica Bowe to the Planning Commission. I hope you all get an opportunity to speak with her. I understand, Erica, that you would like to be on the Site Plan Review Committee, and as chair for today, I'm happy to appoint you to that commission.
Thank you so
committee. All right. We have no matters of special privilege. We have approval of the minutes. Hope everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes, but there's also a slight change to those minutes, some formatting and correction of attendees as amended. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Bowe?
Aye.
Abstain.
Mr. Hamilton?
Abstain.
Mr. Charlie?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
That brings us to the open forum, which is an opportunity for citizens to speak on any issue they'd like to, other than the ones that are on our public hearings agenda. Seeing no one coming to the podium, we have no consent agenda items, and so that brings us to public hearings and PCR 2416 and PCR 2417.
If I may, before we begin those, I'm going to remove myself from the conversation on these as I have an ownership interest in landlord-tenant relationship with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Granger.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tarley and members of the Planning Commission. I'm here to present to you both together, PCR 24016 and PCR 24017. This is an application from Jonathan S. Bender for a text amendment to add a private educational facility with a special use permit in the LB2 district. A private educational facility is a not-for-profit business, the purpose for which is to teach a group of students drawn from the public information, skills, or trades for a fee. The limited business neighborhood is our LB2 district. It is in our arts district. The applicant is requesting an amendment of Chapter 21, Division 6.2, Section 21-255.4. With the special use permit. The LB2 district at this time does allow for schools to be located there with the special use permit. Those schools can be private, elementary, public elementary, high or middle school, and also a higher education. However, it does not allow for it does not allow for a private educational facility. This here gives you the location of 106 Bacon Avenue. It also gives you primarily a location of the LB2 district in which the applicant is requesting the text amendment. The reason why we're suggesting this go before you all with a special use permit is because other educational facilities already in the LB2 require a special use permit. And we know that special uses are those uses which, if not specifically regulated, can have an undue impact or be incompatible with other uses or the neighborhood in which it's located. And for that reason, we suggest this going before you all with a special use permit. A special use permit allows for the public to come out and analyze and look at the application. It allows for open communication and the public hearing process. We believe, staff believes, that the LB2 is a right fitting for a private educational facility. One, the current uses, it's already allowed there to have educational facilities. We believe it's compatible with the LB2 zoning district, and it will provide vibrancy in the arts district. For this reason, staff recommends approval of PCR 24016. Again, this is the text amendment to allow private educational facilities in the LB2 with the special use permit.
I have a couple questions, but does anybody else on the commission have any questions of Ms. Griffin?
I may have a couple questions, but not right now.
Okay.
I did have a question. I just hadn't heard of this school before, and I understand it's been operating, but in a different location, I guess that did include that use, right? It didn't need a permit before, and they just moved, is that right?
That's correct. So it has, he's asking for it to be moved to this location. Yes.
We previously heard and approved a request from Mr. Bender in a different location.
That's correct.
Right, is that, then will that expire?
It will not expire. It is not being used currently. There is someone else renting that space downtown Williamsburg, and so that space was no longer available to him, and so he's now moving on to this space to have his private educational facility here.
And are there any limitations with respect to the special use permit on the number of students at one time, or parking, or anything like that?
At this time, there's not. I believe that there should be, and in my next application, the 2024-017, I do suggest some conditions. I did not put conditions in the text amendment. This is just for the special use permit.
And in my understanding, this is on Bacon, right behind Peter Chang.
Yes, right behind Peter Chang's, across the street from Fleming, and then on the right-hand side is an art gallery.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and proceed
Yes,
with the
I
next?
will. So this is the actual request for Bender Conservancy to locate at 106 Bacon Avenue. Anytime that we're looking at a special use permit, the zoning ordinance does require the Planning Commission to consider 6 criteria, and I'll go through those. Just to give you what Mr. Bender wants to do, he wants to have private music instruction for all standard music instruments. He will create and rehearse choral and musical ensembles, and also teach computer classes and possibly other classes of proper artistic and educational value. This again is a location of the request, 106 Bacon Avenue. And I'll now go through the criteria. The first, that is be compatible with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan designation for this area is mixed use. It does allow for a mix of uses, including residential, office, and some light commercial uses. It has to be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning district. And of course, if you approve the text amendment, it would be in keeping with the zoning district. It has to be in character of adjacent properties and not detract from the character of adjacent properties. And staff believes that this particular request will not detract from adjacent properties. We also believe it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. The other criteria is that the use is adequately served by essential public services, drainage facilities, fire protection, public water and sewer. This particular property has been in commercial use for several years, and so we believe that it is adequately served by public services. Preservation of significant features. There are no features as far as ecological, scenic, or historic importance in this particular area. If the property owner allows, the applicant would be able to get approval from the ARB for signage. I don't expect any other changes to be made to the exterior of the property. And then site layout. The proposed use should be designed, sited, and landscaped. Again, there's no changes proposed for the property except for the refacing of the sign. For these reasons, staff does recommend approval of the special use permit, but we do suggest certain conditions. First, because it will be a music conservatory, we suggest that recitals not be held on site, and we also would suggest that there will be some requirement of the number of students that can attend rehearsal at one time, and or that students are dropped off at the location instead of parents actually staying at the location, and that we believe that will cause congestion as far as parking along Bacon Avenue and then adjacent streets. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions?
Yes, I have one question. That is with respect to the number of people in the building at any given time. Would that not be governed by fire code so that things like recitals would probably be prohibited by the fire code, or is that accurate?
It is accurate, but I have not talked to the building official to determine what that count would be.
Oh.
I would still suggest, even for parking purposes, without the occupancy issue, that we wouldn't allow recitals there.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any off-site parking on that site? I mean, on-site parking on that site?
There is a driveway to the rear, but I don't think that driveway looks like it can hold several cars, maybe one to three cars in the back.
I looked at the aerial map, and it looks like there is an asphalt parking lot behind the house itself. That, I didn't try to estimate how many cars could park there, but
I don't think it would be adequate enough to have, a robust number of students. And I don't know how many students Mr. Bender usually has. If you looked at the pictures that were provided with the packet, it did look like a substantial number of students that use this particular business.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
And Mr. Bender is here in case he has any questions for him.
Well, I'll open the public hearing for anyone who wants to speak on this issue, and I'd first extend an opportunity to Mr. Bender, if he wants to, doesn't have to, but if he would like to make a presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for hearing. And
Could
thank
you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sorry. It is Jonathan Bender, and the address is 106 Bacon Avenue. There were a couple questions, and there's availability for 5 parking spaces, just to clarify, in the driveway behind the dwelling. And right now, there would be availability for 3 lesson rooms and a waiting area in the dwelling itself. My wife and I both teach music lessons, and so just to answer any questions, I suppose it's possible we could open up the waiting area for a 4th lesson room. We don't know that we're going to do that. We hold our recitals. For the past several years, we've been holding our recitals across the street in the library theater right here. And we have no intention to have any recitals. If we did have ensembles, I don't know that we're going to end up doing that. If there was any expansion that would take place outside those 3 or 4 lessons, we would look to expand to a different property. So I don't know if that clarifies anything, or.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bender?
Have any concerns about the adequacy of parking at this site?
Well, with 5 spaces in the back and 3 lesson rooms, we give one-on-one individual lessons right now. I don't think there would be a situation where we would need more than 4 cars at one time. And it seems to me that, my guess would be that people would come and drop their children off and then go to Marshall's or Peter Chang's or whatever it is. But I don't foresee us doing anything. We do have a group lesson right now on Sundays that we plan to have. In the spring, we had the group lesson at, there were 2 individuals, and then myself and my wife. So if the group was going to expand beyond that, then we would probably look to expand to a property. I guess what I'm saying is it's a fairly small property, and we don't intend to do any type of crowding or anything like that. If there should be any problem where we would expand outside the ability of the property, we would look for a second property.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bender.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody else want to speak to this particular issue? All right, then I'll close the public hearing and ask for any comments from the commissioners.
No comments.
No comments.
No comments from me.
All right.
I don't have any further comment.
Pardon me?
No further comment.
All right. Well, on the advice of council, we should do these in separate motions. So do I have a motion on PCR 24-016, which is the request for a text amendment to add a private educational facility?
So moved.
To approve?
Approve.
Second.
Heather?
Ms. Bo?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
And then PCR 24-017, which is the request for a special use permit to operate a private educational facility, specifically a music conservatory at 106 Bacon Avenue. Is there a motion to approve that?
I move to approve PCR 24-017 with the restrictions as stated by the Codes and Compliance Department.
And those restrictions would be,
No recitals and limited parking.
Second.
is that specific enough?
Well, it wasn't limited parking. I think one of, what we were trying to get at is to either require a drop-off or a specific number of students that could attend rehearsal.
I think it might, the number of students would be my input as to, would be an easier restriction than requiring parents to drop off and leave. So,
So with the restrictions of no recitals and no more than 4 students at any given time.
I think that's fair.
so that's the motion as amended, Mr. Hamilton? Or did you
Mr.
second
Bender,
it?
does having 4 students at any given time limit what you're able to do?
So my daughters are also taking violin and cello, and we add them, but without adding them, yes, 4 students would be perfectly fine. I have 2 daughters.
Maybe
just to be
4
just
non-familial
absolutely specific.
students.
Yeah,
No more than 4 students outside of family members.
Yeah.
and can I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Ms. Bo?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. That brings us to PCR 24-018, request by Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to rezone vacant parcel at 300 Capitol Landing Road.
Yes, this property is located, as you said, at 300 Capitol Landing Road, tax map number 468-1700A. The applicants are Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. They're requesting to rezone this vacant parcel from RS3 to MS zoning district. The purpose of the rezoning is to utilize the space as pasture land. The property is approximately 1.242 acres, and it borders the Norfolk Southern Railroad, located near the intersection of Capitol Landing Road and Lafayette. The purpose of the RS3 zoning district is for single-family residential with a medium population density, and regulations are designed to stabilize and protect the characteristics of residential properties. The development is relatively low density, and currently pasture land is not an allowable use in the RS3 district, hence the request for the rezoning. This is an excerpt of the zoning map. Where the star is located is 300 Capitol Landing Road. So it's at the corner of Capitol Landing Road and First Street. You'll see in the yellow is the RS3 zoning. The lighter blue is museum support. So off of First Street, you'll also see that the other properties that are museum support are owned and utilized by the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. There are facilities there that are used for educational and instruction, and some support systems there are also located off of First Street. Colonial Williamsburg zoning is across the street off of Lafayette. The purpose of the MS zoning district is to allow uses that are related to and support the function of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. MS stands for Museum Support. The most intensive uses are allowed with special use permits, and pasture land is an allowable use in the MS or Museum Support District. The comprehensive plan that was just adopted September of 2021 actually had the foresight to have this property, the land use designation, as museum support. So this rezoning is in compatibility with the comprehensive plan. And it's also in keeping with the designation of adjacent properties also owned and operated by CW. Staff therefore recommends approval of PCR 24018 for the following reasons. First, it is compatible with the comprehensive plan designation. It matches the zoning of adjacent parcels owned by CW just off of First Avenue, and it is in harmony with the neighborhood. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and we do have representative from Colonial Williamsburg also in the audience to answer your questions.
Any questions for Ms. Griffin? Thank you. Open up the public hearing, and if anyone from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation would like to speak to this particular application.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tarley and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Neil Elwine. I'm the Executive Director of Architecture, Engineering, and Construction at Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. And I thought it would be helpful maybe for me to talk to you a bit about the pasture use and just, you know, some more background on it and so forth. If you've gone out to the site to look at 300 Capitol Landing Road, and if you continued in on First Street a bit further, then undoubtedly you saw the pasture fencing that we have up on the Bruton Heights Educational Complex. It was about 3 years ago, fall of 2021, when we put up 3 pastures in the Bruton Heights Education Center area. So as you were driving in, you would see them immediately on the right. And we really had almost 10 acres there. We have 3 separate pastures. We put up, you know, the 4-rail wood fencing that if you were there, you would see. We divided the right side, which was the largest parcel, into 2 roughly 4-acre parcels, and then the smaller one, more central and in front of the Bruton Heights School and the Rockefeller Library, is about 1.5 acres. It's been very successful for us. You know, we're always looking for pasture land. It's a limited resource and it's a high need for us. So as we were looking at this acreage at the Bruton Heights School, educational complex, if you will, there was a big opportunity there. And so, you know, in hindsight, it was really a good move for us. Prior to that, we were hiring maintenance contractors to mow 10 acres of grass, if you will, and just the intrusion and not the best environmental decision and so forth. So now we have, you know, the grazing livestock in there, principally horses, occasionally oxen, and the only mowing we do is around the, you know, the shoulders, if you will, from the fences to the shoulders and so forth. You know, it really has transformed that area quite a bit. I happen to work in Bruton Heights School, so I've been there for many, many years and know the before and after. You know, it's a little bit different aesthetic and just the feel of the pastures and the animals there. We do have, we're not inviting guests to come there. In fact, we would discourage, we don't want it to be a guest attraction, but we seem to have folks from the neighborhood likely because there's people that are walking by with strollers and with young kids and couples and so forth, and they love it when the animals are there, it seems. They're, you know, talking to the horses and so forth. So the idea here, it's been a good success, and we're saying, you know, we have this parcel, 300 Capitol Landing Road, which is in the same district, so to speak, the same development, if you will. As you drive in on First Street, you saw the site, it's immediately to your left, and then the other pastures are on the right side to the north. So that's about 1.2 acres, and our idea would be to fence it in like fashion to what you saw if you did see the site, so it would have similar appearance. It is only 1.2 acres, and so our coach and livestock folks that manage the properties are very sensitive to not overgrazing and so forth. They would envision 2 horses in that pasture, and it's also going to be set up with fencing that would allow sheep to be in the pasture as well. But You know, they stagger when the animals are in and when they're not in, and presently there isn't any animals in any of the pastures because they're letting, you know, with the drought and the weather and et cetera, they're letting the pasture regain, and so they're very sensitive to keeping it in good shape and so forth. We did already seek ARB approval in October of 2023 for the fencing, and we got approval on that, so we're good to go and ready to go with that. If we do get approval to press forward by the time we get the, you know, the fencing up, the grass established and so forth, we expect to have beneficial use in the fall of 2025. So that's kind of an overview of it, and happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you, that's very informative.
Thank you.
I have a speaker card for Richard Lake. Is it on this particular issue, Mr. Lake? I noted the address.
My name is Richard Lake. I live at and own the property at 303 Capitol Landing Road, which is directly across the street from the Colonial Williamsburg property. And my only comment is I am delighted that Colonial Williamsburg has requested that this property be rezoned so that it can be established as a pasture land. And I'm hoping that this will be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this issue? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any conversation or motion on this particular PCR 24-018?
I'll jump in and say I think it's great to see. I used to live on Cap Landing Road, and growing up in Williamsburg, walking around and seeing the livestock is really a special thing in our community. And you know, with Colonial Williamsburg looking at times to sell off excess land or develop it into houses, this is a really refreshing thing to see, and I think it's wonderful, and I'm excited to see it, and I think it's good for our community.
I too lived on Capitol Landing Road when we first moved here, and I think my kids would have liked to seen some of the sheep without crossing Lafayette, going down over the bridge. Any other comments or questions or a motion?
Well, I'll move we adopt PCR 24-018 as presented and rezone this particular parcel to MS.
Second.
Bo?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
That brings us to the final public hearing of the day, PCR 24-021.
Yes. One of the goals identified in the 2023 Goals and Outcomes Initiative is to prioritize safety and wellness. And specifically, the goal is to target services that support, improve, and sustain individual health and community safety. An initiative identified under this goal is to evaluate the existing food truck ordinance and to streamline that process. Currently, food trucks are in the zoning district, in the zoning ordinance. It is section 21-622 of our code, and this particular amendment is requesting to remove the operational standards of food trucks to Chapter 9, licenses, permits, and business regulations. The purpose of this is twofold. It will direct food truck operators to the correct department that actually does inspections for food trucks when they want to enter the city, and that is the fire department. And two, if changes to the operational standards of food trucks are made, those changes don't have to come before the Planning Commission because it's located in the zoning ordinance. It'll go straight to the City Council. This is more of a housekeeping initiative. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. We also have in the audience our fire chief and our Kenny Lamb, who is our, gosh, I can't believe him, I'm blanking, Fire Marshal, I was going to say Fire Bureau, our Fire Marshal, who's also here. If you have any questions, they're happy to answer them. This was not done in a vacuum. The changes that are being made here were suggested by our city attorney and reviewed by our city attorney's department. We also, in looking at making any changes to the code, we went out and talked to current food truck operators to discuss this with them. If you have any questions, again, those two gentlemen are here and ready to answer your questions.
Any questions for Ms. Griffin? Ms. Griffin, it is my understanding that essentially all we're doing is moving the responsibilities from the city manager over to the fire department.
Well, the operational responsibilities.
Yes.
So, for example, when a food truck operator comes to the city, the inspection is done by the fire department. Those inspections currently are listed and requirements are listed in the zoning ordinance. So it actually takes it from the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator, who is in the planning office, actually approves the permits and takes in the money when a food truck operator wants to come in, but the actual inspections and operational standards are reviewed by the fire department. So it changes those operational standards, takes them out of the zoning ordinance under the purview of the zoning administrator, and goes over to the fire department in Chapter 9.
Thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone from the fire department want to speak to this issue? Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this particular issue on PCR 24-021? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion or motion?
Move that we approve PCR 24-021.
I second that.
Ms. Bowe?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the rest of our agenda, which is nothing. No site plans and subdivisions to review, no unfinished business, no new business, and nothing other. All the information items are in your packet, and I'll dispense with the requirement for commissioner reports. I note that the public hearings scheduled for August 14th, at this point, there are no public hearings. Is there anything else for the good of the body? Then the meeting's adjourned.